Mosaic, a daily news program from Link TV, presents a selection of news reports from independent and state-controlled broadcasters from throughout the Middle East.
Peace and blessings be upon you. A Saudi security spokesman said that security forces killed a wanted armed man after they surrounded the wanted men in eastern Riyadh, where gunfire was heard. Eyewitnesses said that Saudi security forces fired on a car that refused to stop at a security checkpoint in the area. Our correspondent in Amman reported that the Attorney General for the State Security in Jordan has detained 2 Islamic Parliament members, Taysir al-Fatyani and Musa al-Wahsh, to investigate the recent events that took place at the Wahdati refugee camp a few days ago, after a funeral procession of the assassinated Sheikh Ahmed Yassin, the founder of the Hamas movement. Our correspondent said that the investigation continues with the 2 representatives, describing them as suspects, not as witnesses. During a press conference, Asma Khudr, the government spokeswoman, denied the information presented to her about the interrogation of the 2 members. A senior Arab diplomatic source said that the Arab summit will be held in Tunisia in mid-May, which will be preceded by an Arab foreign ministers meeting at the end of April in Cairo. The source, who requested he not be identified, said that Arab foreign ministers will meet at the Arab League headquarters, confirming that there is an Arab agreement to hold the summit in Tunisia. Meanwhile, Syrian Foreign Minister Farouk al-Shara met with Lebanese President Emil Lahoud and Prime Minister Rafiq al-Hariri. During his visit, Shara handed a letter to the Lebanese president from his Syrian counterpart about the most recent developments in communications in regard to the postponed Arab summit. On his way to Iran, Mohammad al-Baradei, the International Atomic Energy Agency chief, said that the organization has begun to lose its patience with Iran's cooperation regarding its nuclear programs. In France, authorities arrested 15 people suspected of being involved in 2 explosions in Casablanca that shook the city last year, killing 45 people. The French foreign minister announced that those arrested belong to a Moroccan group, but no evidence links them to the events in Madrid. Hours after the arrest, French authorities released 2 people. 13 people remain in detention. A North Korean foreign ministry spokesman confirmed that his country will not stop its nuclear programs until the United States ends its current policies against it. He called for presenting economic incentives to North Korea to find a resolution to dismantle its nuclear program. Russian President Vladimir Putin confirmed to the United Nations Secretary General Kofi Annan Russia's support of UN plans to reform the United Nations in order to strengthen the role of the international organization. In Moscow, Putin and Annan's discussions touched upon the issues of Iraq and the Middle East, and Russia's participation in international peacekeeping missions and assistance presented to the state, which faces difficulties because of natural disasters, war, or conflicts. UN peacekeeping troops taking over peacekeeping responsibilities were deployed to the Ivory Coast. In a ceremony for this event, a spokesman for the new forces, whose numbers will rise to 6,000 men, said that France will deploy forces to its former colony, but that it will gradually transfer some of its responsibilities to the United Nations, adding that its forces' main priority will be to destroy the weapons of the fighters. An American spokesman in Iraq said today that an arrest warrant has been issued for Shiite leader Muqtada al-Sadr for the investigation of the murder of moderate Shiite leader Abdel-Majid al-Khoui, who was stabbed to death in Najaf last April. The U.S. Civil Administrator Paul Bremer had declared al-Sadr as an outlaw, who threatens the security of Iraq. Meanwhile, tension overwhelms the Sharla neighborhood in Baghdad after being attacked by U.S. Apache helicopters, killing 5 people. The U.S. Army announced that 4 of its soldiers were killed in clashes in various Iraqi cities.
A general strike and protests are being organized until the people's demands are met. Considering that the demonstrations were not effective, the residents of Kazimiya in Baghdad closed all institutions in condemnation of the recent events.
Thanks God, now the people of Al-Kazimiya, the state institutions, the police stations, and the Kazimiya school are on strike. The police station shut down, schools shut down, and all government institutions shut down, decrying yesterday's event.
Meanwhile, in the Shu'ala neighborhood, the demonstrations turned into violent clashes between the militias and the U.S. forces, which bombed the neighborhood from their helicopters.
We are Shu'ala's residents. The Americans came here and attacked us with bullets. No one attacked them or did anything. They went up there above those homes, shooting at the office of the Sayyid martyr.
All of these actions in Iraq indicate that the situation on the ground will deteriorate, despite Muqtada al-Sadr's calls on supporters urging them to remain calm.
I swear to God, the missile hit and the young people stand in front of it. They embrace death, sacrificing their life for the security of Al-Sadr, and thank God, they have tried by now this path.
The residents of Al-Kazimiya also denounced statements made by several members of the governing council, who condemned the violent confrontations between the coalition forces and the protesters.
The situation now is due to the United States' Spanish actions attacking demonstrators in the cities of Najaf and Al-Kufa and the Firdaus Plaza.
We are asking the members of the governing council not to label the situation in Iraq as violence. This is not violence. Violence is what the Israelis are committing. We should not be compared to the Israelis.
The fog of war continues to cover the skies of Baghdad and other Iraqi cities, with demands to release all detainees and reopen the Al-Halza newspaper.
They said in a short period we will leave, so we kept silent and patient, and then many attacks happened, most recent being the attack against the Al-Halza newspaper. They say we have freedom of expression and democracy. Where is the democracy they are talking about? Where is the freedom of expression? These are false promises. This is a newspaper that represents the truth. This paper represents the teachings of Imam Ali bin Abi Talib.
These demonstrations and protests coincide with the one-year anniversary of the collapse of Baghdad. Many people did not hide the fact that basic services have not been restored yet.
The situation is due to the coalition forces. As soon as they landed in Iraq, they promised to deliver stability and prosperity. But this did not happen. We are demonstrating against the coalition forces because there is no electricity or water.
The situation is escalating in Iraq. Mr. Al-Sadr's demands have not been fulfilled. Meanwhile, the Iraqi street continues to wait for a signal. Mustafa Al-Atun, Abu Dhabi Television. The images that you are seeing are shown for the first time. They were taken by an Al-Alam cameraman very recently inside Al-Kafa Mosque, where Muqtada al-Sadr is taking refuge. Honorable Sheikh Fuad al-Tarfi, the spokesman of Al-Sadr's office, do you have any information about what happened in Karbala?
In Karbala, clashes erupted between the occupation forces and different popular forces. They resisted the occupation forces and expelled them out of Karbala. The ones that confronted the occupation forces are Al-Hussein brigades, which encompasses the Al-Mahdi army.
لهم تسمية سرايا الحسين وطبعا سرايا جيش الإمام المهدي من ضمن هذه القوات من ضمن سرايا الحسين لأنه سرايا الحسين
The Al-Hussein brigades include several other popular and national forces. Citizens carried out the resistance, and the Al-Mahdi army is just one of these forces.
جيش الإمام المهدي جزء من هذه الجهات التي شكلت سرايا الحسين والتي قامت بطرد المحتل من أرض كربلاء.
لا أنا في الواقع أتساءل عن تطورات الآن يعني وصلتنا بعض الأخبار تتحدث عن سيطرة أو
I'm really asking about the most recent development. We have received reports that the Al-Mahdi army has controlled or occupied some Iraqi police stations. Honorable Sheikh, you can call that whatever you want. That is what we heard.
أنا قلت لك سابقا أنه الذي حصل أنه الشرطة العراقية انسحبت من مراكزهم والدوائر التي
As I told you previously, the local Iraqi police withdrew from their stations. I personally went there and told the police to only protect their centers and not go out to the streets and confront us, because then they will stand between us and the occupation forces. I told them, you are Iraqis just like we are, and the Al-Mahdi army will protect the police centers in solidarity with you.
وسوف يقوم جيش الإمام المهدي بحماية المراكز أيضا تضامنا معكم. فقمت بإعلان بيان في التلفزيون
I made a televised announcement which was aired locally in Al-Najaf and in Al-Ghadir television, calling on local police forces to go back to their stations and serve their country and people in the right way. I personally guaranteed their safety, so nobody would harm them.
There were no exchanges of fire between the police and your forces. It seems that things happened in a peaceful manner. The Al-Mahdi army returned to the local police stations in a peaceful manner. I have one final question.
ربما سيكون سؤال أخير سمح الشيخ فؤاد. نعم تفضل.
If you allow me, I would like to say one thing. The local police voluntarily joined the Al-Mahdi army. We saw the police do this nice thing.
Did that happen everywhere in Al-Najaf?
Yes, I noticed this myself. The police joined the Al-Mahdi army. They put on civilian uniforms and did their duties along with the Al-Mahdi army, even though we told them that they can keep the police uniforms because that would not be dangerous.
Paul Bremer, Iraq's U.S. governor, condemned the violence in Najaf. He said those responsible for the violence had, quote, crossed the line. He also said such a situation will not be tolerated by the coalition or the Iraqi security forces. Bremer was at a news conference to announce officially the appointment of an interim defense minister and an interim head of the National Intelligence Service. Iraq's interim trade minister, Abdul Amir Alawi, was named as interim defense minister, and Mohammad Abdullah Shawani, a former major general in the Iraqi army before going into exile, was appointed interim head of the intelligence service. Bremer said Iraq's interim constitution will ensure that no single institution has too much power. He also officially announced the creation of a committee for national security. Undercover Israeli troops have murdered a member of Palestinian Islamic Jihad and wounded 5 other people, including a member of Hamas in Tulkarem. Israeli soldiers entered the Tulkarem refugee camp and opened fire to a crowd of people preparing to demonstrate near the remains of the demolished home of a Hamas militant. Hospital officials said ambulances arriving at the local hospital with the wounded were subject to stop and search checks by Israeli soldiers stationed outside the hospital. They said Israeli troops seized a critically wounded Palestinian militant in the emergency room. Israeli military sources said forces in the area had fired at a car full of armed Palestinians that approached the troops. Meanwhile, political sources in Israel said Prime Minister Ariel Sharon had heated arguments with his ministers over ambiguous plans to withdraw from parts of the Gaza Strip and the West Bank. Sharon plans to meet U.S. President George W. Bush on April the 14th to seek his endorsement for his unilateral and extremely controversial steps. In Gaza, former Palestinian Security Chief Mohammed Dahlan said chaos could ensue in Gaza if the Palestinian Authority failed to prepare for an Israeli pullout. To Spain now, and at least 3 suspects wanted for the Madrid train bombing set off a bomb and killed themselves when police cornered the group in a Madrid suburb last night. There may have been a fourth or fifth suspect killed, but investigators are awaiting DNA analysis to be sure. Spain's Interior Minister said the ringleader of the Madrid train bombings was killed in the blast, a Tunisian man named Sarhan Ben Abdelmajid Fakhet. One police officer was killed in the explosion and 15 were injured.
The Spanish Interior Minister said the alleged ringleader of the Madrid train attack blew himself up along with 3 other suspects on Saturday night as police prepared to storm their apartment. Khalasibi said the 4 who died included a Tunisian named Sarhan Ben Abdelmajid Fakhet. He is described by Spanish authorities as the leader of the group suspected of carrying out the March 11th train attacks that killed 191 people. Fakhet was one of 6 men for whom international arrest warrants were issued. Another man on that list, Abdel Nabi Kunja, a Moroccan, was identified as among the 4 who died. A third man, Asri Refat Anwar, was not on the list. The 4th suspect has not been identified. As police got ready to storm the apartment south of Madrid, the suspected terrorist set off a thundering blast that also killed a special operations officer and wounded 15 other policemen. Police said one of the dead suspects was found with an explosives belt around his body. 2 or 3 people may have escaped before the explosion. SCB said the group had explosives ready for more attacks. In the apartment, police found 200 detonators of the kind used in the Madrid attacks and in a bomb that was placed along a high-speed rail line on Friday but failed to detonate. Police say they also found 10 kilograms of dynamite in the apartment. The Interior Minister says police are now focusing on what connections the bombers may have had abroad or with other terrorist groups. Israeli occupation soldiers killed 3 Palestinians, claiming they were approaching a border crossing between the Gaza Strip and lands occupied in 1948. And Israeli occupation forces killed 2 Islamic Jihad members in the West Bank a day after killing Hamas member Ramzi Fakhri Arda. The 2 were among a group of people who were paying their respects for Arada's family at Tul Karam refugee camp. 8 others were wounded in the aggression. And on the political front, Palestinian factions decided to meet again on Sunday to discuss prospects for administering Gaza after a possible Israeli withdrawal. Undercover Israeli occupation troops stormed into Tul Karim refugee camp on Sunday and opened fire at a crowd of people. They were paying their respects to a Hamas fighter who was shot dead by Israeli occupation forces on Saturday. They also demolished his family's home. The Sunday aggression killed 2 members of the Islamic Jihad and injured 8 others. The 2 are Khaled Kharwish and Rami Khalili. Israeli military sources said forces in the area had fired at a car full of Palestinians. After the shooting, the occupation forces forced ambulances to go through stop and search checks by soldiers stationed outside the hospital as they headed there with the wounded. Late Sunday, around 20 Israeli jeeps pushed into Arava town in the northern West Bank. Clashes broke out after troops moved into the town and locals started throwing stones at the soldiers. They imposed a curfew and surrounded a number of houses. The incursion took place shortly after a group of fighters began firing on an occupation army post just outside the nearby Jewish settlement of Mevod Dotan. An Israeli soldier guarding a security fence that was being built around the settlement was lightly wounded. Hamas and Al-Aqsa Martyrs Brigades both claimed responsibility for the shooting in separate statements. The fence being built around the community of Qadim is meant to supplement Israel's separation wall, which has already been completed in the northern West Bank. Palestinian youth demonstrated at a hillside site at the village of Bidu, where construction work on the wall is taking place. In Gaza, Palestinian factions met to look into how to administer the area after an anticipated Israeli withdrawal. The delegates agreed to meet on Sunday to continue the series of talks on the issue. The discussions focused on 2 issues. The first is running the Gaza Strip after an Israeli withdrawal. The second is forming a united leadership to make up political decisions.
Hamas was expected to submit its own work plan, but didn't. Yet it is possible that the plan will be discussed in the next meeting. Many other factions preferred not to come clear on their position until they evaluate the kind and size of the Israeli withdrawal if it takes place.
Palestinian Chairman Yasser Arafat said on Monday that Israel should withdraw from the whole of the West Bank and not just the Gaza Strip. Arafat was speaking at his Ramallah headquarters during a reception with children marking Palestinian Children's Day. He condemned the Israeli reoccupation of Bethlehem and the attacks on Al-Khalil, Nablus, and in the Al-Aqsa Mosque in occupied Jerusalem. For his part, Israeli Premier Ariel Sharon said that Palestinians might not get a state for many years as a result of Israel's unilateral disengagement plan. More than two-thirds of Israelis are in favor of the continuation of targeted killing operations after the assassination of Hamas spiritual chief Sheikh Ahmed Yassin. A poll for the Tel Aviv University survey found that a total of 74% of people questioned said the targeted killing of Palestinians is justified from a moral standpoint. 69% said such operations should continue because they are a necessary means of preventing or at least reducing the killing of Israelis, while only 23% said that they should stop as they often involve killing innocent Palestinians. Morocco said it was not prepared to host an Arab summit as Arab leaders continued efforts to find a new date and venue for holding the summit was called off by Tunisia last week. In his latest meetings, Egyptian President Hosni Mubarak held talks with President Bashar al-Assad of Syria and Sudanese President Omar al-Bashir. Mubarak said the summit may be held in May and offered to meet fellow Arab leaders anywhere, even on the moon.
Since Tunisia took the unprecedented decision of calling off the Arab summit last week, there has been a deadlock over where to hold a rescheduled summit. And since then, Egyptian President Hosni Mubarak is receiving Arab leaders in an attempt to put the summit back on track. On Sunday, Mubarak held talks in Cairo with Syrian President Bashar al-Assad. Both men agreed that a summit must be held, although Mubarak said that it was unlikely before May because of travel and other commitments by Arab leaders. The Egyptian president is himself due to travel to Washington in mid-April. Mubarak also said it was up to Arab leaders to set a venue, but he did not mind if the summit were held in Egypt, Yemen, Tunisia, in any Arab country, and even on the moon, as he said. He explained his offer for Egypt to host the summit was aimed at saving the situation and preventing protests in Arab countries. The Sudanese President Omar al-Bashir also held talks Sunday with his Egyptian counterpart, and Mubarak further questioned Tunisia's justification for postponing the summit. Tunis had said Arab foreign ministers failed to agree on proposals it deemed essential for political reform in the region.
There was no obstacle, as they are saying. In any meeting of foreign ministers preparing for a summit, there is agreement on some issues and differences on others, but these are presented to the summit and discussed, and a result will come out. There is no difficulty.
Meanwhile, the Tunisian President Zain al-Abidine Ben Ali insisted his country was entitled to host the summit as rotating president of the Arab League, while adding it would intensify consultations with, quote, brother countries. Arab League Secretary General Amr Moussa further continued his consultations by traveling to Morocco on Sunday after meeting the Tunisian president, a day after Saudi Foreign Minister Prince Saud al-Faisal was there. An Arab diplomat earlier said Morocco could emerge as a compromise location, but Rabat denied the information.
Iran insisted Sunday that it was not hiding any of its nuclear facilities from UN inspectors and that its resumption of work on a key part of the nuclear fuel cycle was not a violation of its commitment to suspend uranium enrichment activities. Foreign Ministry spokesman Hamid Rida Asafi said there is no nuclear site that the IAEA is not aware of or hidden from inspectors. He said Iran has a transparent and constructive cooperation with the agency, and this will continue, adding that the UN Watchdog's Director Mohammed al-Baradei's visit on Tuesday is important. The Iranian official insisted his country is committed to its engagements and up to now has not violated any of them.
The Moroccan citizen Mohammed al-Baqqali is one of the suspects arrested in Madrid in the wake of the bloody explosions in Spain. His family in Tanja city was shocked by the news of his arrest in Spain, where he has been living for years. His family confirmed that his behavior and conduct did not at all reflect that he had links to any terrorist organization or extremist groups. The report of Thuraya al-Farisi from Tanja.
Muhammad al-Baqqali is 32 years old and grew up in this home in Tanja. He went to Itwan University and earned a degree in social science. After graduation, he decided to finish his PhD at Madrid University. Today, he's in prison on suspicion of having links to the Madrid explosions. His family and relatives are still in shock. They cannot believe that their son, who has been arrested, was involved in acts of terrorism.
I have been saying that my son is innocent. I know that he is not that kind of person because I raised him with my own hands. He was born in Tanja and grew up in Tanja. The young men in Tanja know him. He never did anything immoral in his life. He is innocent of such accusations and suspicions.
The al-Baqqali family members received the news of his arrest in shock, insisting that he is innocent. His open-mindedness and forgiving personality testify for his innocence. He is full of life, loves music, sports, and books, and was thrilled by academic achievements.
I talked with him before the demonstration.
What was that demonstration about?
To condemn terrorism. It took place on Saturday between noon and 1 p.m. He lost his voice during the demonstration, which was held to condemn terrorism. We're holding a candle and a flower. He was against terrorism in Morocco.
The two other men that were arrested for the same reason are also from the same village, Muhammad al-Shawi and Jamal Zaqqam. According to al-Baqqali's family, the relationship between these men and their son are only business relations. They sell mobile phones. Their son worked with them just to make money so he could pay for his schooling. Because mobile phones were used in the Madrid explosion, the three Moroccans were arrested, including Muhammad al-Baqqali.
Al-Shawi has only business relations with my son. He owned a cellular phone store, and that is how my son established relations with Al-Shawi. Jamal is the brother of Muhammad al-Shawi. This is how they knew each other.
أنا لا أعرف التفاصيل. أعتقد أن السبب وراء اعتقاله هو المتاجرة في
I do not know the details, but I think that the reason behind this arrest is the fact that he was selling cellular phones.
محمد البقالي فنحن متأكدون أنه شاب.
About the personality of Muhammad al-Baqqali, we are confident that he is an optimistic young man with modern thinking.
يعيش حياته بشكل طبيعي عصري يحب عمله.
He lives his life normally. He loves his work and is very committed to his studies.
Il est toujours attaché à ses études.
The innocence of Muhammad al-Baqqali and the others will only be revealed by the result of the investigations. That decision will be made by the Superior Court in Madrid.
Mosaic is made possible by a grant from the John S. and James L. Knight Foundation, which promotes journalism excellence worldwide and invests in the vitality of 26 U.S. communities, and the William and Flora Hewlett Foundation. Additional support is provided by the Firedoll Foundation and Henry and Virgilia Dakin.